Hello and welcome to Long Live Hooky Street, the podcast where we rewatch and discuss every episode of Britain's most beloved TV comedy, Only Fools and Horses. I'm Heather and I'm joined from Austin, Texas by my co-host and sister, Jenny. Say hello, dude.
Hello. Today we are discussing Series 1, Episode 5, A Slow Bus to Chingford. So grab a red drink and let's get started.
This episode aired on the BBC at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday the 6th of October 1981. Viewing figures are down slightly from last week at just 7 million. Wow. Still airing in the same time slot between the Rockford Files and the 9 o'clock news. Adam and the Ants were still at the UK #1 slot this week with Prince Charming. However, we do have a new #1 movie at the UK box office this week. That movie was Heaven's Gate, starring Chris Christopherson. Any trivia for us this week, dude?
The Trotters Ethnic Tour's departure point scenes were filmed at Ridley Avenue in Northfields, which is just down the street from the North Acton estate, which was used for Nelson Mandela House. A 1956 Leyland bus was hired from the grey-green coaches, with the same company's Stamford Hill coach station being used for the night watchman scenes, with the whistling. So Janice was played by actress Gaynor Ward, who at the time was a notable teen actress, having starred in Grange Hill and The Tomorrow People. But this was one of her final roles. She was actually dating Nicholas Lyndhurst at the time of shooting Only Fools and Horses. The title for A Slow Bus to Chingford was derived from the song On a Slow Boat to China, which we know comes back in dates and is a significant song for Del and Raquel. And finally, the cost of a Trotters Ethnic Tour was £17 each, which today would be £67.78. Would you pay that much?
Hell no.
I don't know. I feel like nowadays that is totally how much a tourist would expect to pay for a guided tour of a city on a bus. But
well, how much did we pay for our terrible tour to Niagara Falls?
Well, it's a little bit different because that does include a 2-hour drive to Niagara and a whole day, and also one of the most beautiful scenery. But I would say, like, let's say you go to, I don't know, Chicago and you go on a guided tour bus. I think $60-70 would be fine. That's about 50 quid.
I think it's because I just don't like the idea of going on guided tours. I think that's the reason I wouldn't pay that, because I like my freedom.
I don't like guided tours all the time, but it does depend. I think sometimes if you've got a short amount of time in a city and you want to see a lot, like I really enjoyed the walking tour of the haunted New Orleans that I went on.
I suppose the only tours I've really done were really grim ones, actually. Auschwitz and the killing fields in Cambodia. Those are the only two that I can remember. Oh, and Alcatraz.
I was going to say, what about Alcatraz? We went there together. That's all I have for this episode, so let's move on to our rankings.
Okay, so yes, let's do that. So you probably know by now, prior to recording, we each independently ranked all 64 episodes. And as we go through the episodes each week, we're going to reveal and compare our rankings for each episode. So I don't know Jenny's rankings and she doesn't know mine. So let's start with your ranking, dude. What did you rank A Slow Bus to Chingford out of 64?
Okay, my ranking is number 55.
So is mine.
That is insane. Okay, so far we've had 2 clashes, and that's been this one and Go West Young Man. That's pretty crazy. Yes. Considering the odds, that's pretty low.
I mean, we do have, I know without even hearing about our rankings yet, that we have similar favourite episodes. So I'm sure that this is likely to happen again later when we get to our favourite episodes, that we might have some similarities as well. But yeah, for like least favourites, that's a bit more of a mixed bag. So I agree. It's a bit more unlikely that we'd have clashes. But anyway, tell me, why did you rank this episode as 55 out of 64?
I was just going to say that I think it is quite possible that I'm going to say bottom 10, but I don't want this to sound like I think the episodes are bad.
Bad, isn't it?
They aren't bad. I don't even want to hyper focus on the bottom 10 really as being 10 bad episodes, because I don't think they are. I just think that the reason that these episodes are falling so low on our rankings is because all of the ones above them are so much better. And also these ones, like series 1 in particular, are going to fall down low because the show really hadn't found its feet. And this episode is one that I feel the first half of it is okay. I think the second half drags a little bit with the bus.
Yes, I agree.
And I think a lot of people would think the same thing watching this episode. You're kind of waiting for something to happen. I feel like the episode would have been a lot better if people had shown up and we actually got to see Del do the tour. But I do understand why it was written this way, because we're not supposed to see a successful businessman. But later on, you see John Sullivan's ideas. He actually puts Del doing the stuff instead, whereas you see in series 1 a lot of failure, which kind of shows that his strength really back then was he was writing a lot of sketches and stuff, and it was very dialogue focused. So yeah, that's what these episodes reflect. They reflect his ability to write the dialogue between the characters. So this one and Russians Are Coming, there's a lot of just conversations between Del, Grandad, and Rodney, which are interesting to people who know the characters years later watching them back. But if you put this episode on and showed it to someone and was like, this is Britain's most beloved TV comedy, that's the reason for me. What about you?
No, I think the same. I think this episode on the whole is quite slow. The pacing isn't that great, and the jokes tend to fall quite flat. I think throughout the entire episode, actually, even though the first half of the episode is stronger, I think the entire episode falls quite flat. And the big sort of joke of the second part, you know, the bit we're leading up to with the tit thing, we'll talk about it later, it's so predictable that it's not funny. By the time Rodney actually says the end of the joke, I already saw that coming, and I think most other people can see that coming as well because of the initials of the company. So I don't know if you know this, dude. Did he choose Trotter's Independent Traders because it spelt tit?
I do know this, yes, and I put it in my notes for the scene, but I was going to put it in the original trivia, so that's fine. I'll just tell you now. No, John Sullivan did not plan for the initials to spell anything. It was an accident. He said that, his exact quote
what
from
a
the
tit.
His exact quote from the book was, I just imagined Del coming up with a grand name for the company, like Trotter's Independent Traders. And after a while, he noticed that it spelled tit. But he said Del hadn't realized, and neither had I, he said. But I guess he realized it when he was writing this episode. So yeah, he did not plan it.
Yes.
But as we'll know, longtime fans of the show know that it comes back in... Is it Chance of a Lunchtime, I want to say, when he is talking about his letterhead? Yeah, and he says...
Del, thanks to your high profile, we now have a company called Tit and a director with Dick after his name.
So they do reuse this joke again, but it's really long time in the future. So it's not like Tit is made a big deal of.
No, but I mean, in this episode it is. I feel like it's really highlighted, like that entire exchange when they're standing on top of the bus, but we'll get to that later anyway. Can you tell me what was the IMDb ranking for this episode?
Yeah, so for IMDb, the ranking was 62. So it's in the bottom 4. So last week, second time around, was 61. This week, Chingford is 62. So these episodes are not favoured well on IMDb. Either they're not watched as much or they're just not as popular. But I will say I pulled an excerpt from a review this week from Aurora64 on IMDb. Says, a quote from the review, this is not the entire review. Once again, Del Boy comes across as an unlikable character in the way that he treats Rodney and Grandad. I have never really understood the appeal of the character. It's actually interesting because this is the first time for me as well that I felt you see a slightly unlikable side of Del. It's first of all in the way that he comes in and quashes Rodney's chances with Janice at the beginning, and then treats him, you know, just like it's not so much the way that he treats him in this scene, it's just the overall attitude he has, where he just comes in and like puts the fire out and then he makes Janice leave, which is very uncool. But yeah, the way he manipulates him with the job, expecting him to work all day and all night without rest, and he doesn't do anything while he's just dating Rodney's girlfriend. I think I can see why somebody might think that. He does appear in this to be completely manipulative Rodney. There doesn't seem to be any sympathy for Rodney at all in this episode, which we've seen in the other episodes, like a more loving relationship between the two. That's kind of missing from this episode.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, when they do this joke later on where they do, you know, Del comes in and ruins the date with the Petulia when he's with Cassandra, I believe it's at the beginning of The Unlucky Winner is. At least they have Rodney getting back at him because he eats his smoked salmon and drinks Albert's wine. Whereas in this episode, it's just Del coming in and being spiteful for no reason. At least he's got more of a reason to be spiteful in that episode. And they seem to be nicer to each other later on. I agree with you. And it's just playing Rodney off as really naive as well. I mean, he does challenge Del, but I mean, we'll get to it when we do the episode breakdown. Do you have anything else you want to say about the ranking?
Yeah, just that. So the general vibe from IMDb is that the episode has few laughs and is fairly forgettable. And the chemistry between the three lead actors is the main reason, and the good writing is the main reason that people would actually return to continue watching it week after week. So yeah, that's all I have really. So do you want to get on with the episode breakdown?
Yeah, sure. Let's get into it. So we begin the opening scene with the flat, and we've already mentioned Rodney is on a date of sorts with Janice, and they are sitting on the couch together, and Rodney is quite forward in the sequence where he says to Janice,
Janice,
Yes, Rodney.
get your bra off.
I think that's quite forward to say, especially when there was literally not really any build up to it, no other sort of sexual innuendo. It was straight to get your bra off. And Janice's reactions to these statements, or this statement, is also quite not what you'd expect.
I can't, Rodney. I'm not wearing one.
Janice's character is just very airhead style. Obviously, that's meant to be the joke, but yeah, I wasn't convinced that was a realistic portrayal of how this situation would go. But anyway, after that, we, of course, get Del entering. As you mentioned, he's very bullshit. He interrupts everything. He doesn't have any consideration for Rodney.
Well, not dark in here, isn't it? Oh, put him down, Janice. Put him down. You don't know where he's been.
Again, it reminded me of The Unlucky Winner Is. That's something I put in my notes.
Yeah, I put that in my notes as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Rodney says,
You're in, are you, Dale?
which again is just sort of Rodney trying to get his own back, but it's not working out very well. He's trying to, get a quip in. But Del is just so completely oblivious. And then, he starts insulting...
Last week down the Pie and Eel shop, Del shook the international art world to its very foundations by stating quite openly that Michelangelo was a wally brain.
Yeah, that is a funny line, yeah. And yeah, I think that we always seem to get into art when Rodney's on a date, because it's the same with Cassandra. Again, The Unlucky Winner Is. It's almost exactly a parallel.
Well,
we're talking about art again.
Yeah, I did actually write this in my notes because I went and checked, and that is the exact line that is used in The Unlucky Winner Is, Series 6, Episode 4. Del comes in, quashes the date, and Rodney says,
We've just been sitting here discussing art, that's all.
it's exactly the same line. So it is funny that is the same scene, but you can see a big difference, yeah. I actually really love the bit where Rodney kicks the record off.
Oh, well, then what we got going on here? Oh, I'll have a drop of that, thanks. Here, look, we don't want all this rubbish on, do we, eh? That's better.
Because that, sound of the record is the exact sound that plays when something goes, all fucked up. And Rodney's date was going quite well. He was about to kiss Janice. I was going to say that her agreeing to what Rodney said is a sign that she really likes him. It's really surprising that she sneaks out. But she obviously likes him because she's not saying, oh, you're disgusting. She's like, yeah, okay. And she tries to kiss him. So she likes him. And then Del's like, "Rrr," and ruins the flow of the date.
Yeah, no, that is a funny sound effect. Yeah, I use that in some of my dramas when I do them as well for my schools. So something else that is again quite an interesting quote when he says,
Now, this is a statuette of the world-famous Venus de Milo, right? Now, who but the sick of mind would do a sculpture of a disabled person? Am I right, Janice?
It's a bit sick, isn't it?
Well, this is a sign of the times. It's very non-PC now, but I would think... Because obviously, this is a twofold joke, isn't it? It's supposed to be a joke that Del doesn't understand that the Venus de Milo was not like that originally. So we're forgetting that the joke itself would be offensive now to disabled people. The joke is that Del doesn't understand that the Venus de Milo originally was not sculpted that way. So I guess it can be forgiven for that reason. But yes, that is a sign of the times, yeah.
Well, also the fact that
TV
Janice...
today.
No, of course. And the fact that Janice agrees with him also kind of does show me that even though obviously what Del does is bad, stealing Janice, they are more suited than Rodney and Janice are. It seems like Del and her are on the same wavelength, whereas Rodney's not. He thinks he's a bit too smart for Janice.
Well, yeah, and Rodney's trying to say all that stuff at the beginning about art, and Janice is like,
I don't know, Rodney.
he doesn't care that she doesn't know or understand. He doesn't care, and she doesn't care. They like each other. They're two young people. They're into each other. Rodney's trying his art talk, but it's unnecessary. Janice is happy to hang out with someone like Del, so...
Yes, so then we get into my favourite part of the scene, which is Del introducing Trotter Watch.
NSO, Janice, is a nocturnal security officer.
Yeah, you see, it's a nocturnal security officer. That don't half sound like a night watchman, Del.
The Nocturnal Security Officer, the NSO. And we have the trying on of the uniform part. where Rodney twigs right away that it's his traffic warden's uniform.
TW
That's right, Trotter Watch.
could also stand for traffic warden, though.
But I think that that's quite a funny thing that they do there with the TW and the Trotter Watch and the traffic warden. I think that's really funny. And obviously, every time they put Rodney in clothing and they try it on him, it never fits him. They do it in No Greater Love when they have him try those camel hair coats on. And Rodney's doesn't fit well, and he looks like he's not been well. They do this, I think, a few times with Rodney because Nicholas Lyndhurst does have a very interesting physique, I suppose, or should I say unique physique. So, of course, it doesn't always fit clothes maybe that well, and he always has a lot of room in the back, and that's a joke that is always played throughout the series, which is funny.
Yeah, having Del dressing him up in stuff as well comes back a lot in the future, like putting him in the silly things to display how they look and stuff. Pretty much starts from now onwards. We were saying last week we had Rodney selling in the market, and that doesn't really come back. This is something that does come back. Rodney's like the joke, and he's always dressed in things that look massive on him because that's really funny on like a gangly looking teenager style kid looking like Rodney, how he does. The giant clothing, and Del folding the back in the way he does to make it appear. That's exactly what he does in No Greater Love when he puts the coat on him.
And then we have the great line,
I look like a traffic warden. I look like a traffic warden who ain't been well.
which is very funny. And of course, Del, again, does something quite manipulative here. He does the reverse psychology on Rodney in front of Janice to manipulate him into taking the job. He says,
Well, of course, if you're scared, you could admit it. Come on. Alemania, dispoir. Janice will understand if your bottler's gone.
and that's a very cruel thing to do to Rodney. Because, of course, Rodney's scared. He wouldn't want to do that job. Most people would be scared to do that job. Adele would probably be scared to do that job. But, this is something, again, we do see Del do this in other episodes, but maybe not in such a mean way, not in front of a potential love interest. I can't think of another example when he does it in that situation.
No, not right now I can't, or at least we haven't encountered that yet. This is the first time we see this.
Yeah. And then, of course, we end the scene with...
Your bondage ropes, they're in the garage, all right? And Grandad, he's washed your whip and he's put it in the airing cupboard.
And then we see Janice sneaking out of the door, as you said, asking her to take her bra off. Obviously didn't scare her, but talking about whips and bondage, I guess Janice wasn't into that. But it is a bit strange that she wouldn't have stayed to say, really? To Rodney? And then he went, no, just joking, Janice, it's fine. Obviously, it has to end that way to get the laugh. But in real life, if someone's brother came in and started saying that stuff in front of you, you would know it was a joke.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's clearly a joke, but
yeah,
it works.
So yeah, that's everything for the opening scene. Is there anything that you want to add?
No, the only other thing I was going to say is that they're talking about unemployment.
It's 3 million unemployed. What chance has Rodney got?
That was actually current for the time. So, yeah, that was a time of super high unemployment during the time of filming.
Yeah, I feel like Rodney's unemployment is brought up so much throughout the series because this is why he always ends up working for Del, right? Ultimately, the only time we see him have a job is when he goes to work for Cassandra's dad. And Rodney, I wasn't sure, when I was younger watching this, if it was because of Rodney's criminal record, but then it's also mentioned that it's because he hasn't been on the grid. Like, I think it's a conversation with Raquel where he says, why can't you get another job or something? And then Rodney says, it's not that easy or straightforward. Is it, Derek? And then he says, no. And then he goes into sort of Rodney's history. I can't remember which episode it is. It's
that's
in
in He Ain't Heavy. He's My Uncle. Yeah.
So season
I was going to
7,
say that, it's... I don't know. Yeah, I don't buy all the reasons that Rodney can't get another job. I agree he can't maybe get another corporate management job. But there are jobs all over the place if you're willing to work. It's the same in this country. There's lots of people who say there aren't jobs, but I've never worked anywhere where I haven't had trouble finding employees. Just no one applies. People are manipulating the government payment system by applying and then ghosting interviews. There are jobs everywhere, and Rodney would have been able to get a job. Yes, I'm not saying a well-paid job. I'm not saying a job that maybe could support his lifestyle in the future with being with Cassandra, but she worked. She had a good job, so there's no reason why he couldn't have gotten a job. But they have to keep playing off this that he can't get a job because that's why he keeps ending up working for Del. There's no reason why.
It's more of a trope that's used then for the series, but in real life you would be able to get a job. Yes,
but yes,
agreed.
not right now. So like in the early stages of Only Fools and Horses, we're talking 1981. There was super high unemployment. It's quite possible that he couldn't get a job at this time, but I don't know about entry level positions like working in the bus garage at night and stuff. I can't see why he might not have been able to get those jobs, but I don't know because I'm not quite sure how difficult it was to get entry-level jobs then.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like working in a shop or something like that, you'd imagine like anyone could do that kind of work. I mean, that's where I started working. That's how you started working at 16, get a job in a shop. I mean, that's quite standard for most people, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think like nowadays there are jobs again out there. Like I drive around here where I live and there's signs outside every single shop saying they're hiring, and the government reports unemployment at a record high. So they're talking about corporate jobs that people want to do. They're not talking
about jobs that people want. Yeah, exactly.
They're not talking about jobs that you can't hire for. And where I work now, we're constantly short-staffed. So, yeah.
I mean, we can talk about it later on when we review the other episodes, but there is a part of me that thinks that Rodney likes working for Del because he does seem to always go back to that, even as you say, if he really wanted to get out of it, he could. I think the only episode that he seems to really try is Modern Men, which is very late on, you know, when he has that funny phone conversation with Del with the funny accent, when we actually see him applying for another job while he's working for Del. But other than that, I can't think of any other example where we actually see him actively seeking work outside of Del.
And that makes sense because if you think about the progression of your life, when you have a child on the way, which is the only time we see that reality for Rodney, is when he actually panics and thinks, I need to be a better breadwinner here, because Cassandra might have always brought in plenty of money in her bank job, but she's about to become a mother and will have to take some time off work, and he actually panics and thinks, I need to get an actual job here. So all the other times throughout his life, I mean, he had the good job when he first marries Cassandra, which is nice, but that doesn't last. Well, it's because it's through
Cassandra, isn't it? I mean, that's the other problem, you know, when you get... Of course, they do stay together in the long run. I'm not sure in real life if Rodney and Cassandra's marriage would have lasted, honestly, because they were both so childish, and obviously that's played up in the episodes as well for laughs, but in reality, that relationship likely would not have actually survived as it does in the series.
No, because Cassandra...
like getting a job... Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say Cassandra wouldn't have had the patience in the episodes where they're back together, like Mother Nature's son and stuff, to just be chilling, working her ass off at the bank while Rodney's working for Del, and she knows it's not a legit company. So, in reality, that wouldn't have worked. But what were you going to say?
No, that was basically it. I was just going to say, that getting a job with your husband's family, you know, all that kind of stuff. I think that's not a good idea. I think you should always keep work and family separate, because if things go badly or you break up, as kind of does happen in Only Fools and Horses. I know it's not the reason that he loses his job or leaves his job, although it kind of is, because he puts the resignation in as a way to apologize to Alan or make him aware of the situation or something along those lines. So it is directly because of his marriage to Cassandra or the problems that he ends up losing that job.
Yeah.
So, I just think you should keep those things separate. Anyway, scene 2. Back to this episode. Sorry, went off on a tangent there a bit. So now we're in the bus station, and not a lot happens in this. It's predictable. Del introduces Rodney to his job, his night watchman job, his trotter watch job. And there's a couple of funny lines in this. I like it when he says,
nothing happens round here. Quiet as a grave.
That's quite funny. And Rodney's reaction is the funny part, when he sort of puts his head like really quickly, sort of double takes to Del. And then, of course, we have here the revelation that Del is now going to take out Janice, which again is ridiculous. I just put in my notes, Rodney agrees to this? Question mark, question mark, question mark. I mean, Rodney's not dumb. We see him at this point, even in the series, we've seen him challenge Del on a number of occasions. This is not something he challenges Del about. Like, it's a bit ridiculous.
I feel sorry for Rodney in this episode. That's why I was going back to what we were saying in the reviews. Del dating Janice is really uncool and also a little bit strange because of the age difference. But, I mean, we see Rodney and Del pursue the same woman again in the future, which I think it's okay, probably until about series 4 or 5, but then it just starts to seem strange that somebody as old as Del would pursue some of the women that are as young as the women that Rodney would pursue, because it's supposed to be a 13-year age difference between them. So Janice seems way too young for Del.
Yeah, I mean, and we also, obviously, it's massively implied later when Del says, again, jumping ahead about...
Yeah, did you know your Janice doesn't wear a bra?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, you know.
Yeah, that's right. It insinuates that
it's
something's
implied that they
happened.
sleep together. Yeah, exactly. So it's even... And Rodney, again, is fine with that. Like, he doesn't say... I mean, there's a slight reaction, but it's no big deal, you know, and it should be. And he even asks him, like, how are we doing with Janice? So...
I mean, I get that for this episode, it's fine. And I think I actually am not one person to judge and say that age difference is a problem in relationships. It just because it seems predatory, the way that Del pursues some of these women, and they seem way too young. Like the women in Go West Young Man seem too young for him, sorry.
It's a difficult one, I think, because... Maybe as well, I don't know if you agree with this. I think David Jason probably looks a little bit older than he actually is. Whereas maybe some of the women look a little bit younger than they actually are. I don't know if that's a factor too.
I think David Jason was older than Del. That's the thing.
Why.
He's 41 and Del was supposed to be 35. So I think it's probably just because of the way that Del pursues the women that it seems creepy. I don't think there's a problem with age difference. But when you've got an older guy like looking at the woman in the way that he does and saying the things he says about women, that's when it comes across as predatory. That's the reason, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, absolutely. And then just to finish off this scene, we have a moment that I think is quite funny when Rodney starts whistling and Del hangs around the corner and then joins in the whistle and Rodney runs. That's pretty funny, actually, especially Del's reaction. I feel like we get that reaction like the end of a scene with Del hanging around a corner laughing. It reminds me of It's Only Rock and Roll. Yeah. When he's outside the room as well. And he's just, again, Del sort of leaning up a wall and laughing at something he's done to Rodney. I feel like that's something we see quite a few times.
Yeah.
Also,
sure.
Another episode just came to mind with Sleeping Dogs Lie when Rodney gets in the van and Del goes, like on his bum. And again, it's just seeing Del laughing at something he's done to Rodney.
I was thinking of Yuppie Love when he says all the comments and Rodney walks into the school after Cassandra and he laughs and then he puts the bag over the meter. So yeah, you're right. There's so many times that a scene ends with Del laughing at something he's done to Rodney.
Yeah, poor Rodney. So anything else you want to add about scene 2?
Nope.
Okay, so now we get to scene 3, which is the flat. And we find out that Grandad used to be a security officer. And this is another one of those stories that one of these exchanges between Del and Grandad that I really like. I love this story. They seem to do the sort of old man stories very well with Grandad's character. I think this is one of my favorite things about Grandad's character when he has these stories that he tells to Del.
Well, call it intuition if you like, but I was suspicious of him.
Oh, yeah, why?
Well, we were only a sweeper up.
Oh, how do you do it, Holmes?
I think I love the ending of this story when he says,
"There's a moral to this story, Del boy, but for the life of me, I can't find it."
Yeah.
Do you know what the moral of this story is?
No, I think
Did you prepare for this episode?
No, I mean, I think the punchline really is that there isn't a moral to the story. Like, but I mean, I guess the moral to the story is like, a lot of the time we're correct in our assumption that something is amiss, but our method of exposing that often leads to our own demise. That's
there you go. You got the moral. I think I agree. That's perfect explanation of the moral of the story. Yeah. So here we find out that Del is doing well with Janice. Again, unbelievable to me. So Rodney has been in bed.
What time is it?
The time is nearly 9 o'clock.
9? Oh, I'm going to be late if I don't get a move on.
No, it's all right. There's no hurry. No, go on. No rush. Sit down. Take it easy.
Hey, it's still light out. It's broad daylight.
No, of course it would be, wouldn't it? 9 o'clock in the morning. What do you expect?
9 o'clock in the morning? I thought it was 9 at night. I've only been in bed 20 minutes. What you waiting for?
And then, of course, we get all of the bit. Now, again, this is one of those sort of explanation parts of the episode where Del is introducing why we are going to be hiring the bus and, you know, doing the tourist stuff. Rodney falling asleep during this is quite funny.
This is where a dynamic person like me steps in. Wake up while your brother's being dynamic.
I don't really understand the comedy side of
Ethnic London.
They seem to play up that part, like Rodney's reaction is also quite big, and there's not really a laugh on the laugh track for that. And all the locations that he's referring to that I guess would be quite funny if you know the locations. I don't know most of these locations, so I don't personally find that funny. I don't know about you, dude.
Well, I mean, this was, I know, I didn't write this in my notes, but I read it in the lovely Jubbly book that the ethnic thing was John Sullivan's direct reference to, I think, a pub that his dad went to that actually said, he referred to something as being ethnic, and John Sullivan found that funny. It's when they're talking about all the different locations of London, obviously these are real places in London. They're not places that tourists go, and he explains that. You know, people don't want to see the tourist spots. He seems to think people want to see ethnic London. It would have been interesting to know if anybody would have shown up for this tour. We don't, obviously, the leaflets did not get distributed, so we know nobody showed up for that reason. I'm sure there are tourists that would go to this tour, and just purely out of curiosity, or maybe they don't even understand what they're going to look at. The whole concept of it is quite funny because it's Del's take on, you know, what he believes tourists might be interested in, and which is different from the standard. But he could have probably set up a company to do the actual regular tour and probably been more popular. I don't know whether you're allowed to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know either. Obviously, I've never ran a tour company, but I've certainly been on one of the worst tours I've ever been on with I'm going to mention this now because just for context for the listeners, Jenny and I went to Toronto in June of last year, and we went on a tour to Niagara Falls, and it was hilariously bad. To the point where we were just so vastly disappointed. The drive there was over 5 hours. We were sitting on this coach. We didn't have time to get off and see any of the things that were listed. It was just terrible. And actually, I was thinking about this episode a little bit when we were on that tour, that this is probably how the Trots tour would have ended up.
The difference between, I mean, the only difference there is that everything we saw when we did get to see the scenery and when we did look out the window, it was beautiful. I think the difference here is that we're not sure there's anything that anyone would have wanted to see on this tour. And also later when they're talking in the bus, we find out that Del doesn't know anything about any of the places. He doesn't know any genuine history. He's planning to blag the whole thing. I was going to say, it fits, the whole idea of the ethnic tour fits in really well with Del's character, if you think about it. That's the joke of it, is that Del created this idea that he thinks is amazing, but then we have the voice of the audience through Grandad, where he says,
Ethnic tour's the most stupidest thing I've ever heard of.
See?
The audience knows it's stupid, but Del's excitement about it is his character.
I have got to say, though, based on, again, the tour that we went on, those tourists that were sitting at the front, I'm not sure where they were from, but they were lapping it up, even though this guy was unbelievably boring. And for all we know, half the stuff he was saying could have been complete bullshit. We wouldn't have known any different. So I suppose there is an element of this that's true from Del's point of view, that, as he says in the episode,
it's a well-known fact that 90% of all foreign tourists come from abroad.
So I think that, which is the funny line, but yeah, I mean, the likelihood that a lot of, you know, maybe people whose first language is not English, they could go on a tour like this and he could say a load of shits and slang and everything else, and they wouldn't question it.
Yes, exactly. And they also would maybe find this stuff fascinating because there's no accounting for the novelty factor when someone goes to another country of what they're looking for and what they might find interesting. And yes, a tour of ethnic London to somebody who's never been to England before might, and maybe they're like, they don't want to see all the big touristy things, because this is like something that we've done in the past too. When traveling, sometimes you want to go to a backstreet bar that, you know, your host knows about. It would never be on TripAdvisor, and nobody would ever say, oh, you should go to this bar. Like, sometimes it is nice to discover the undiscovered parts of a city, and you don't know.
I mean, that's what couch surfing used to be about.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, back in the day.
So Del is correct in that in saying that some of the foreign tourists might really have lapped this up, and he could have made money on this. He's not wrong.
Yeah.
It sounds like a crazy idea.
Here we have Dell's revelation that Rodney is going to drive the bus. So Rodney is going to work all night for Trotter Watch as the night watchman, and then he's going to drive the bus all day. And Rodney quite clearly and quite understandably says,
I've got to sleep, Del. My whole body's crying out for sleep.
So the thing that I have a question here, because he asks about the wages. And I'm like, why wouldn't Rodney find out how much he was getting paid before he worked his first shift for Trotter Watch? Because he did ask about the wages in the first scene and Del sort of brushed over it and said, we'll talk about it. But then Rodney went to work without finding out the wages. And knowing who Del is as a person, surely Rodney would know to not go to work for Del without knowing what the wages are going to be. I mean, that seems to me to be just a huge, ridiculous thing that Rodney did there.
Yeah, it's a big misstep, but I mean, like say, you can assume that he probably trusts Del will pay him, but why would he trust that? And also, Del just brushing over it and being like, I can't afford to pay you a lot. And then like admitting that it's a trade and he's not getting any money from the coach company. Again, it's just another another mark against Del's character in this episode. He comes across really bad because he's manipulating Rodney to work 24 hours a day and he's stealing his girlfriend.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And yeah, you already touched on how Grandad feels about it, but they mentioned that Grandad's going to be, how is Grandad helping while he's giving out the leaflets? So you're absolutely right. Del is going to be the tour operator. He's going to do all the pitter-patter to the tourists, but is that all he's doing for the whole venture? So Grandad's handing out the flyers. Grandad comes along on the tour. I'm not sure why he needed to come on the tour bus.
Exactly. He didn't need to. And also, like, at this point, it seems like both Rodney is stupid to trust Del with the night watchman job, and also Del, why would you choose Grandad to distribute your leaflets?
Yeah, I agree.
What, Grandad can barely walk. I mean, he can, but like he's not going to go around London and make a good effort at this. He also doesn't believe in the scheme. So at this point, Del maybe should have spotted a flaw, but...
Yeah, there's quite a few inconsistencies here with the way that they all trust each other here. So yeah, Rodney shouldn't be trusting Del for the wages. Del shouldn't be trusting Grandad to distribute the leaflets. Like, from what they know of each other, this wouldn't happen. So yeah. And then, of course, we end the scene with Del saying he's going to get Rodney help.
Nero.
Who's Nero?
Nero. Janice's corgi.
Which is clearly not a police dog, which is what you'd need for that job. So we move on now to the, let's say, the slower part of the episode.
The slow bus.
So we have the slow bus to Chingford. So we have, they're on the bus and it's the morning and the time is 11:30 a.m. And it says they've already been waiting for 2.5 hours. So they were supposed to be there at 9 a.m. and it's 11:30 a.m. and they think people are still going to show up.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy. I would have made it 9:30 maybe in the scene. If you want us to believe that they're going to wait there all day, maybe don't start with already it being 2.5 hours after the departure point, because I wouldn't even wait an hour. I would be like, okay, no one's going to come. Because, yeah.
After an hour, you'd already know that no one's going to come. So 2.5 hours is ridiculous. And I'll talk a little bit more about the time frame here because I wasn't too sure exactly what time it was meant to be, like if they stayed on the bus the whole time or they went home in between. Like, I'll ask you, I don't know about that for the next like 3 concurrent scenes, because the scene after this, it's nighttime on the bus. So did they just wait there all day until the nighttime, and then do they sleep on the bus because it seems like it's the next morning then on the bus, or did they go home and then come back?
Oh no, I mean, my understanding of the timing of the episode is it starts at 11:30, it goes past lunch, they get the drinks, and then the scene at the end on top of the bus is supposed to be the end of the day, not the very end of the day.
So what about the nighttime in between the first scene 11:30 a.m. and the lunchtime drinks? There's a nighttime scene right in the middle on the bus.
I didn't observe a nighttime scene. It's all in one day, is my understanding. I'll have to go back and confirm, okay. But I mean...
Yeah, I've written the bus that night, lots of anecdotes. That's what I wrote for scene 5, which is the scene after this. So.
Continue with what you're saying and I'll look in the script if it says anything.
Yeah, you can check.
I don't think it's supposed to be over. I think it's just all one day because they go home at the end of the day and he throws out his sign. I don't think they would go back the next day. But yeah, keep on with your...
This is what I mean. I was not clear about that. So anyway, we have here Grandad making the bet of £50 with Del that no one will show up. I think Del, again, is really stupid to agree to that bet when it's already 2.5 hours into it and no one's shown up. So Del is making a bet that no one's going to show up or someone's going to show up even after 2.5 hours after they were supposed to show up. Like, that's really stupid. And again, that's what made me think about the timeline, because...
Okay, I can confirm now. You're correct. So after the conversation where they're talking about Mount Pleasant and ends with Del saying...
Mount Pleasant hasn't got a summit. All it's got is a big post office sorting depot.
That's ethnic, innit, eh? We can give them a guided tour of the depot. You know, show them the workers getting the most from the post. I should stay awake if I was you. They'll be here in their hundreds in a minute.
Then it says night. And then that's when it says Del's saying...
Take them over to North London. You know, show them where Jack the Ripper was buried.
Nobody knows where Jack the Ripper was buried.
Well, they can't prove me wrong then, can they, eh?
And then it says, after the 3 exchanges of dialogue, day again, and then Grandad's approaching carrying the drinks. So that must be the next morning. So you're right, they spent the whole night on the bus. So what happened to Rodney's night watchman job then?
Well, yeah, this is the question I have. So I was like, so did they go home after
it
the
seems
night
like they
bit
stayed
before
on the
they came
bus.
back for the... That's what it seems like. That's what I mean. So I really wasn't clear about this at all. But again, it's so ridiculous. If you've put, let's say, I don't know what the date is, the 30th of June, 9 a.m., and it's 11:30 on the 30th of June, and no one's shown up, why on earth would you assume that someone would show up on the 1st of July at 9 a.m. Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, they got the date. You know, it's just the whole premise is a bit silly, really. I think that's kind of what the issue is here.
I guess I never
it doesn't
observed
make a lot of
that.
sense.
Yeah, I never realized that a night passes. But I mean, when does Grandad's bet cut off then? Yeah.
Well, this is what I mean, because he makes it, I said, 2.5 hours after we've already established that no one's coming. So it is really weird that Del makes the bet. And then we have just an exchange here. I didn't go into too much detail about all this because I just mainly wrote like anecdotes, lots of anecdotes here. But Del admits that he knows nothing and he's going to improvise.
If they ask me any questions that I find a bit dodgy to answer, I should just say, I can't understand their English.
Which is quite a flippant remark. I mean, living in Hong Kong, I know that that's really sensitive, actually. A lot of people, people here, you know, that are bilingual, most people in Hong Kong are bilingual, but they are very sensitive about their English being understood. And they usually are very shy to speak English. Even if they have perfect English, they're still very sensitive about it. So something that I always try and do with my students is to try and reassure them, you know, even if their English is broken or they, you know, don't have a perfect accent when they speak in English, that I can still understand them. And I say, you know, it's fine as long as I can understand you. Your English is no problem. And I just wonder, like, if that would be really awful for all those tourists who are trying, like, to build up the confidence to speak in English to the tour guide and ask questions. And then Del just comes back with, I can't understand your English. Like, it would probably make them all feel really bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very in keeping with Del's character throughout the entire of Only Fools and Horses. You hear him make a lot of comments and to foreign-speaking people about their English. Like, he jokes about it a lot. You know, I'm thinking about when he's in the Chinese takeaway in Video Nasty and he's like, you can't even speak the lingo. He always does that. That's just his character, and that might have been really common at that time in like London. So yeah, I think that's normal for then, perhaps a little bit non-PC now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, do you have anything else you want to add about
No,
that
not really.
scene?
I mean, yeah, this is like you say, the slow part of the episode. And I was going to comment on how the word slow is even in the title. I do remember when I was a kid, I saw, like, I always use that title to remind me I don't want to watch this episode because it's slow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. Yeah. I mean, the fact that this is like, we've got 8 more episodes below this for both of us.
And it is like,
grading.
I think the thing that saves the episode is probably the beginning part and the trotter watch and the funny idea that Del has. The reason that it sits above others is probably more to do with the others than this episode, like the weakness of the others.
Yes,
true. It's not just that the dialogue in the bus is fairly slow and uneventful. They're talking about a lot of very specific London things that if you are not from London at all, you don't even really get the joke. Like, he says, like, he's going to take them to the summit of Mount Pleasant, which, you know, people who know that will laugh, but some people might not know that Mount Pleasant doesn't have a summit. They might be even like looking at it from the point of view of Del and like not getting why he's coming across kind of silly. So yeah, the very specific humor, which is great and well written, but just isn't going to appeal to a huge amount of people.
To someone like us,
not children.
Who,
so like I understand it now.
No.
I didn't understand it when I was a kid, and if you're not from England, you're not going to understand it at all. Let's put it that way.
I still don't understand a lot of it now. Like, I don't know London that well. I really don't. So, yeah, a lot of this still goes over my head even now as an adult. So, the nighttime scene, which is scene 5, again, I said wrote lots of anecdotes. I don't know if there's anything you want to add for that, but it's the same type of dialogue. I feel like all 3 of these parts, until we get to maybe the rooftop bit, are all quite repetitive. It's the same kind of setup. And again, it's speaking about something specific. So, yeah, so we'll go to the next scene then, which is the next morning, which I wrote. But again, I'm not sure if that is what it is. I don't know.
You mean when they come back to Nelson Mandela House?
No, when they bring the drinks onto the bus.
I was a scene ahead.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure. Yeah, you're a scene ahead.
I think, because I put one scene for the entire exchange on the tour departure bus. The departure point of the bus.
Oh, okay, yeah, I put 3. I put 3. Yeah, I put 3 different scenes. That's why. So, I already addressed that part about not sure if they stayed there all night or not. I wrote for this that some of Rodney's questions were covered by the laugh track. I don't know if you noticed that, but it's because we're laughing at Del's joke, I guess Del's delivery of the joke, and then Rodney immediately asks another question in his very quiet voice. And I couldn't actually hear some of Rodney's questions very clearly. Yep. So
that's an issue in future episodes too. Yeah, laughter track covers the dialogue.
Yeah, I really like the 2. There's only 2 episodes that don't have a laugh track, that are Miami Twice and To Hull and Back, that I've watched that don't have the laugh track. I think everything else does, right?
That's why sometimes it's interesting.
Yeah, it's a shame more don't do it.
It's interesting to read the script because you will actually see that lines were said that you've never heard.
Actually, that's true. Does the original A Royal Flush have a laugh track?
I don't think it did, no, because it was edited very hastily, and that was one of the issues. But we'll come to that in, I don't know, a couple of years when we get around to
we'll come to that later. So there is one thing that's quite funny, quite a funny observation when they say,
if they've never seen an elephant before, how did they know it was an elephant?
Yeah, it's not that the dialogue written isn't funny in its own sense. It's just that, like I say, it's very specific. But that's what people said about the chemistry. The delivery of the lines and the chemistry between the actors is what makes this show great from the very beginning. And yes, some of the storylines are weaker and some of the physical comedy is lacking, but the show is still good and the characters are still great. So some good lines, definitely. You can pull some good lines out of it.
That was something that I could pull out because I got that and I thought that was funny. I said most of this, honestly, it goes over my head. And then we go up to the top of the bus, and if I'm not mistaken, this might be the first time he says this time next year we'll be millionaires.
No, he says it in Big Brother.
Oh, right. Fuck. Okay, never mind. So then, but Grandad has quite a funny comeback to that.
You said that this time last year.
And then, Del does the big speech talking about the future of Trotter's independent traders, what his dream is. And this description actually reminded me a lot of what we see in Heroes and Villains.
Yes. I have to wonder about that. Yeah, that futuristic, which is actually next year, view of the world in Heroes and Villains. I wonder if he did draw back on this. I don't know. We'll have to see when we come to it.
I mean, it's really only the tower part, not the advertising.
Well, the
stuff.
big billboard.
But, the fact that there's this huge tower.
Like Trotter's Independent Traders big billboard. No, maybe he doesn't say that.
I can't remember that if he does. I know he says about the tower with like the big initials, and he's standing on like the balcony of the penthouse kind of thing. So, I mean, that's just what it reminded me of when I was.
Well, we know that Del's vision of success is him in a huge skyscraper with lots of power. So that does kind of come back. Yeah.
Which is what Damien has in Heroes and Villains. So, and then we've already discussed this earlier on, but we have the punchline, the tit punchline. Yeah.
Well, don't you see what the dream's trying to tell you? As you're standing on that balcony with your red drink, just above your head in 50-foot-high neon lettering is the word tit.
And then, then we have that revelation of Del being a tit that convinces Del to finally give up, and then Grandad gets his 50 quid for his bet, and then wages, I put.
Rodney comes out and asks like...
What about our wages then, Del?
Oh, yeah. I meant to talk to you about that.
We all know Del hasn't made any money off this venture. He owes money for the night watchman to Rodney. He owes money to the company for rental of the bus. And he hasn't made a single cent. I mean, pent.
No, and he gave 50 quid to Grandad, so...
Yeah, he lost. But then they're all losers.
Yeah, he lost everything.
Except for Grandad.
Yes.
No, that explains why Grandad came along, because he says like all the good things about it. And he's like, he got a couple of days away from the housework. There you go.
That's true. Yes, I didn't even think about that. So, we then moved to the last scene of the episode. So we were outside the flat. So not in the flat. We get to see the outside. I'm trying to think at this point. In Go West, Young Man, we were outside the flats, but not this particular area.
This is still the North Acton estate where they filmed all the exterior shots of Nelson Mandela House. So they actually, you see them drive the bus into the parking lot. The car park of Nelson Mandela House.
Oh, that was one other thing, actually, just as a plot point. Don't you have to have a special license to drive a bus?
You do. That comes back in Jolly Boy's outing, doesn't it? I don't know. Not only... Well, they don't mention it, do they? Because Rodney obviously is supposed to have a driver's license in the show by this point, but Nicholas Lyndhurst didn't have a driving license in Go West, Young Man. So did he actually drive the bus? Do you see him get out of the driving seat? I don't know. That's funny.
I don't remember. Yeah, that's
But yeah, you do.
Look back. I don't.
You do have to have a
license.
That's completely glazed over in this episode. Yeah.
So then, of course, we have the exchange just between Del goes to throw the sign down the chute that says the Trotters Ethnic Tours because he decided he's not going to do it anymore, and Grandad's bragging to Rodney.
I've had 2 days away from the housework, a nice little drink, and I've won myself a 50 quid bet. Very nice. Very nice indeed.
And then, of course, Rodney says where Del has gone, and then we get...
The dust chute? Oh, my God.
Grandad! Come here, you senile old parasite.
It wasn't me, Del boy. It was me brain.
And then, we just end the episode with Del chasing Grandad, Rodney trying to stop him, and Del throws the leaflets at Rodney, and that's the end of the episode. So...
Well, yeah, I said it earlier, but Del's trusting Grandad to do it was stupid. But Grandad's hiding location, like he didn't even go he couldn't have gone to another building. If he was going to go out for the whole day distributing leaflets, couldn't he have thrown them in any other waste disposal than the one at the flat? Like, it seems like he was asking to get caught.
Yes, it was a bit lazy.
And all the leaflets are obviously just lying on the top. So yeah, I think Grandad was not really covering his tracks very well there. But yeah, another comment I had was that you can see that Nick Lyndhurst, David Jason, and Leonard Pierce go all out with the physical comedy because it's aggressive the way that he throws those leaflets, and they stumble and he pushes past Rodney. And they from what I read, they all loved doing all these scenes, and they did put their all into it, and they were all really good sports with it. But Leonard Pierce gets the leaflets practically bounce off him. So yeah, it's really well done.
Yeah.
It's very believable.
Oh yeah, you believe that. I think the chemistry, I've never said anything different. The chemistry between the 3 actors is phenomenal. You completely believe they're brothers and this is their granddad. So that's wonderful to be able to establish that. So,
and the ending is good, right? This is a good ending to a slow episode.
Yeah, it's agreed. It's at least got a little bit of a pop at the end. Yeah, that's true. So so if there's nothing else, let's move on to our awards segment.
And guess what? He's only one.
Okay, yeah. So as always, we have 3 awards to announce this week. So we're going to start with Plonker of the Week.
Plonker.
So for Plonker of the Week, we each nominate a plonker, and then we discuss and decide who wins. So let's start with your nomination this week, dude. Who is your nomination for Plonker of the Week?
Okay, now I imagine most people will say Del for this episode. As you mentioned, he's mean and stuff, but I'm going to go with Grandad because I actually think Grandad was really unfair to this situation because he decided not to distribute the leaflets. He didn't give Rodney or Del a fair shot at this working out. And honestly, I know Grandad wanted to win the £50 bet, and maybe that was his plan all along for making it fail. But if he distributed the leaflets and quite a few people had shown up, the Trotter brothers would have made money quite a nice bit of money maybe, and that always would have gone back to Grandad. So I just thought, yeah, Grandad here was the biggest plonker for sabotaging this before it even had a chance to get off the ground by not distributing the leaflets. I thought that was just really, not a good thing
I
to
agree.
do.
I actually put Grandad as my nomination too, so I guess it's kind of a no-brainer. But yeah, he actually was you could say Del, but you're right, we didn't give this venture a chance. And like I said, given tourists who will pay for anything, because we've seen all over the world, there is no reason why Del couldn't have made a ton of money on this. If he'd filled that bus up at £17 a head, he would have made a lot of money, and Grandad would have got more than 50 quid. He wouldn't have wasted a whole day, and he might have even had an ongoing business idea that would have got Grandad away from the housework many more times. So yeah, even though Del was a bit of an asshole in this episode, I think, like you said, Plonker's more kind of poor decisions and stupidity. So Grandad is the Plonker of the week.
And I got done for it.
So this week, Heather will be giving award for the best line of the episode, and I, Jenny, will have chosen the best moment. So Heather, what line have you chosen for your award this week?
So actually, I don't necessarily have a line. I have a segment, which is the theft story from Grandad about the briefcases. I think that entire segment is written so well. It's so interesting to listen to. Every time I watch the episode, even though I've heard it loads of times, I love hearing that story. I love hearing Leonard Pierce's delivery of it, Del's reactions to it. I just think, that entire exchange is very funny. So I have given that the best line of the episode.
What you mean? You'd been searching the stolen gear?
Yeah.
Okay. And then for me, Jenny, I have chosen best moment of the episode, and I have selected the end of the episode. My favourite moment is when Del comes around the corner with all those leaflets in his hand. Just the look on his face, the way he looks all dishevelled. And he just comes around the corner and we get, the big reveal of the episode, which is why it was so slow and nobody showed up, because of the leaflets. I actually think, it ended well, opposite of last week.
When you said the ending, I thought you meant the credits.
I don't want to be too hard on this episode because, I still love the show. But it's slow indeed,
Oh, I still rewatch it, but I wouldn't put this in one of my I'm going to sit down and watch an episode of April Nonsense. Which one should I watch? It would be 55.
I mean, honourable
64,
mentions
so.
wise, the other funniest parts for me are the parts where Del's dressing Rodney up for Trot to watch. But apart from that, I do think, overall, it doesn't have that many memorable moments. So.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I just want to mention to our listeners as well that Trotter Watch was one of the potential names for our podcast.
And one of the reasons we didn't go with it is because this episode isn't that memorable to people. I think it might have been a little bit too obscure. That's all. So if you're done with any honourable mentions, then drink up, we're leaving.
Okay, so that about wraps it up for this week. So join us next week when we'll be discussing Series 1, Episode 6, The Russians Are Coming. And until then... Au revoir, listeners. If you like what you hear and want to contact us, you can email us at longlivehookeystreetpodcast@gmail.com. All one word, no spaces. Bonjour.